Hi, I am Barbra Dillon, Editor-in-Chief of Fanbase Press. Given the impact of the Eisner Awards, their importance to the comic book industry, and Fanbase Press's own mission to celebrate fandoms, we have once again launched our annual Countdown to the Eisners coverage, where we seek to highlight the Eisner Award nominations for this year and provide comic book industry members and readers alike with the opportunity to learn more about the nominees and their work. This year, we are releasing 4 videos consisting of industry professionals discussing why the Eisner Awards are personally impactful, which nominee or nominees are the most interesting to them, why the average comic book reader should take notice, and how the Eisners might evolve to match our changing industry. Thank you so much for watching.
When it comes to deciding how the Eisners could change, evolve, or improve, that's a hard one.
I think that Will Eisner lent his name to the Eisner Awards as part of his general championing of the medium and the business of comics, and to give it a kind of seal of approval and legitimacy for the outside world to pay attention. And so the Eisners have 2 different roles. One is to recognize inside the industry the work and the people that have really made an impact this year, but then also to sort of cast that spotlight to the wider world.
As a judge myself, 4 years now? 5 years now. It is a lot of work. It is 5 people reading thousands of comics, in print, digitally, and deciding it for 30 plus categories. But it begins with more funding. A lot of the people, pretty much everybody except for the management for the Eisners, do it all completely unpaid. And so if there's some way, I'm not saying people should be paid, but there's ways to do that for more funding, to have a more nuanced and more regimented award system that I think could benefit everybody.
One recommendation that I would have to the Eisner Awards to foster the growth in the community is just a little more transparency around the categories for the nominations every year, and also what qualifies. Right now, what we have is slightly vague, and it seems to sometimes be changing from year to year, which is totally okay if we all know what's going on. But because we don't, it can be a little frustrating at times.
One direction of growth that I would love to see the Eisners go in is really making it transparent how to nominate yourself, how to nominate your work, and keep that window open a little longer.
Like an actual campaign system for how people can submit these works.
Like, I realize like the jury pool is small people and they do have to read all of those things. They don't want to feel this like avalanche of things that they need to read, but at the same time, we start seeing the same wonderful creators show up every single year, and I just know that there are more comics than that. So like, I love the idea of going like, we want to read your comic. If your comic has not been seen, has not been represented, and you're super proud of it, like, let's get that nominated. Let's put that in the conversation.
I think it comes from the publishers and the creators encouraging their publishers to submit, but unless you're already plugged into that process, like, it's not necessarily going to get there. And I think that that is really limiting what we're seeing in terms of like those international categories, for example. We're only seeing major translations from major publishers, but how many other great works are out there that should be getting this attention that may just not be making it into the process?
I think there are a lot of awards shows out there that make it extremely easy to nominate yourself or to have your readership nominate you. And I think that's what we need to focus on with the Eisners. It should be so simple to get your book in front of the jurors. And I think once that happens, we'll see a wider net cast.
I think as long as the industry stays open to all the different changes that are continuing to happen in comics publishing, and just to keep up with all of that and be willing to be flexible and go with those changes that are happening as publishing changes. That to me is really important.
The comic book industry continues to evolve in some mostly great ways, greater readership, broader diversity in the types of stories and the creators that are contributing. And as far as the Eisners, I think that it's difficult to grow that fast with it, but I think that they could evolve a little bit too.
And maybe make more specialized categories the way there is for the Russ Manning Newcomer Award, where it's a separate judging description for that category.
Maybe a committee that specializes in the nonfiction, a committee that specializes in all the adult books, a committee that specializes in the teen and the children's. You kind of get the point.
What if there is a way to have specific judges for some categories, such as journalism, but also say for lettering, for design, that is a special category for a special set of judges for either one category or a set of categories that could give a more expert opinion to understand like what is being done.
Being able to do that would give a lot more people an opportunity to be part of the process. So allowing a lot more expertise and diversity in viewpoints. And, you know, then we would have more of a spectrum of folks that have been involved that can now speak to what the process is really about, why things were chosen.
My one recommendation for the Eisner Awards is to help foster the growth of the comics community and just help elevate things is during the ceremony, which is a closed audience, but during the ceremony, acknowledge some of the challenges that the industry and the culture and the readership are facing. Right now, for instance, very specifically, we are dealing with an epidemic of book bans in the United States right now and beyond. And many of those titles that are being targeted are comics, graphic novels. More so than a lot of the other traditional books. They're being targeted for very specific reasons, and they're being targeted because of specific identities and content and authorship, and that is it's folks trying to erase other people from public spaces, and to have the Eisners acknowledge that as an organization, to bring it up, not leave it up to just the creators who are nominated and maybe during an award speech, but to actually have the organization bring it up and stand shoulder to shoulder with some of these creators who are being nominated and are also being targeted and banned, and some of the titles that are being targeted and banned.
I think in terms of suggestions or hopes that I have for the Eisners is always just a continual attention to thinking about how we're celebrating marginalized creators outside of designated history months.
Comics are becoming increasingly more inclusive and diverse, a space where more and varied people get to see themselves reflected on the page. And I love that. I would also love to see that the Eisner Award selection process do the same.
We can add categories, which are really important in terms of putting spotlights on areas that are unheard and unseen, in the way that, for instance, the hashtag #OscarSoWhite kind of started to do for the Oscars.
By having recognition of marginalized creators on lists like the Eisners, it helps to ensure that we're really kind of attending to more of an equity model as opposed to a kind of limited inclusivity or sort of signaling at diversity model without really doing anything tangible.
But I'll be honest, I think what we really need to work hard on is we've done really well for the Eisner judges being representative across these different areas like industry, retailers, education spaces, so higher education, librarians, and of course, creatives themselves. But I think within that, I would encourage us to really to proactively reach out to more Latinx representation on that, say, jury or that judge panel.
I look forward to the day when the judges also reflect more inclusivity and diversity, and that there are more women and people of color and LGBT+ representation than they presently do.
I think that my hope is always that the judges who are, of course, so central to making decisions related to who is included on the Eisner's list always accounts for thinking about marginalized identity. My hope is always that sort of the judges for the Eisners more broadly are also kind of thinking about how these lists can function as opportunities to be those conversation starters for advocating for marginalized creators to be invited to panels that don't necessarily always exclusively have to do with topics related to identity.
What I would like to do is if I'm fortunate enough to hit upon the right combination of characteristics and something that satisfies both me and a broader readership, is to bring sort of the queer and the indie sensibility to a broader audience. And I think that's something that the audience is out there. We just have to find it.
I think Eisners needs more recognition, and I think Eisners needs more visibility. I do find that my average customer has no idea what Eisners are.
Promoting who the winners are and promoting who the nominees are very widely, like having that stamp or seal or something that you can put up at retail to draw attention to those things, so that somebody coming into the shop, the same way that the Newbery Award or something like that, is the seal of approval for kids' books, have something that says this is really worth your attention.
We need to be doing that. I mean, I try to do my own part. We just did a whole video where we included our friends and everybody we know that are creators that are working with us that were nominated for an Eisner. We want to lift them to the general public a little bit.
That this can really be a launch pad for smaller creators, particularly those who are, doing work in kind of a smaller handmade capacity. Because while I think it's important to certainly recognize and acknowledge the contributions of creators who are contributing to comics in kind of these more large scale or highly visible capacities, I do also think that the Eisners have the unique ability to be able to create a kind of platform for smaller creators who perhaps, for reasons related to class, let's say, they have a sort of smaller audience or window for how their work is currently being seen.
I thought about this question a lot. I think the Eisners do a great job within the comics industry, but really it's getting buy-in from people outside of that world. So how do you engage with the general public who may still, and I can't believe in 2024 people are still saying comics aren't real reading, those same old tropes. I think the Eisners could do a better job of reaching out into the mainstream to get people who aren't already aware of the joy and the importance of comics for reading.
I would love to see more comic book fans actually attend the Eisners. Like Brad and I, we've been going to San Diego Comic-Con for like 12 years.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah. And we went to the Eisners for the very first time last year. And like, you think, okay, like I've been to a high school graduation, I've been to an award ceremony, it's going to be boring, you know what I mean? It's not going to be about me, it's not going to be about the audience. But honestly, as a reader, seeing these people who sit alone at their drawing table or at their laptop and they do their work, to watch them receive applause and receive adulation and use that platform to talk about what in comics they really care about was extraordinarily moving for me. And I just want more fans to have that experience. And